Alright, hi, it's Zale from Harddrop. I've written a program to basically make Spectator mode a lot higher resolution, and we're going to go through the instructions on installing the app. So there's two apps. The first one basically takes screenshots of the screen and outputs it to a specific format, and the second program displays it. So the first thing we're going to do is download the program that screenshots the screen. Go to this URL and hit the screen button and download the zip. Then it will download. I'm just going to copy that to my desktop. Next thing is we want to install Python, a very specific version of Python. I actually think most versions work, but this is just the one I used. So this is 3.6.4 and it is 32-bit and it's for Windows. So we're just going to download that, the link I provided. You got to install it. So one thing to note is you want to add it to your path. That lets you run it from anywhere in your system. I'm going to customize the installation. So just leave all those ticked. Install for all users and precompile standard library, probably the ones you want. And yeah, I'm just going to put it in a different spot, but you can leave it in the default one. Alright, so it's finished. Let's open our command prompt, cmd, administrator, yes. So if I type Python, it opens up Python 3.6.4. And if you type in exit, it leaves it. Cool. So we've got to install a few modules to get everything working. The first one is PyPyWin32, which lets you call Windows DLLs. So that you just type in pip install and then pypy win32. It might ask for confirmation if it, oh, it's done. The second thing is a thing called Python imaging library, which lets you manipulate images. So pip install pillow. Cool, that was quick. Now we're going to close this command prompt because we don't need admin mode anymore. So let's unzip this program. So I'm going to hit extract, and here it is. So if you go inside it, there's a whole bunch of files. There's a thing called run.bat. Basically all it does is run Python on this program here. If we hit run.bat, it pops up this window here, and basically this is going to configure our screen capture. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this and we're going to open our Tetris friends. We're going to choose our window target. There's these two buttons here, hide screenshot and processed. So we want to hit show hide screenshot. That shows you what it's actually capturing. The reason this isn't displaying anything is because we need to actually turn off hardware acceleration in our browser because the DLL I'm using can't read stuff off your graphics card. So if you're using Chrome, you just go to settings and we go to search the settings and just hit I think it's like GPU acceleration. I'm just going to type acceleration. There you go. So use hardware acceleration when available. We're going to disable that and relaunch the browser, restart this program. So run.bat. And it's even got the right URL. So we're going to show hide screenshot and boom, there you go. We're just going to go join a room. We're going to adjust the capture rectangle. X and Y are like starting coordinates, width and height is W and H. So these plus and minus buttons are pretty useful. They shift you across. So I want to go that way. Let's make it a bit wider. Let's make it a bit higher. And let's just play around with the numbers until we get vaguely what we want. So I'm just going to try and, nope, wrong way. Adjust this until it works. Cool. See all these white dots here? That's actually what's going to get captured. So we actually want to line that up to the center of each grid. This thing, grid size pixels, increases and decreases the pixel grid. So if I do that, it increases. If I do that, it decreases. So what we want to do is first set this up so we're capturing players 1 and 2. So let's do that first. And then we're going to adjust the grid to line it up properly. There's also like an FPS meter here, so you can see that rendering this is actually pretty slow in Python. It's rendering at 30 frames per second, or 25. But if you hide it later on, it jumps to like 100. So, cool. I've got both the players now. We're going to increase this so that it vaguely matches. I believe the number of my computer is 10. You actually want to crop off the player names because it's not necessary and it's just wasting CPU cycles. Try and get these dots to line up as well as you can. This thing called garbage separation, see these green dots down here? We actually want to line this up with this column. So if I line that up like that, you can see that these white dots are vaguely centered on the matrix and the green dots are centered on the garbage. So that means we're good to go for player 1. Player 2 is exactly the same. All we have to do is move this set of white dots over. So this player X separation just shifts the entire second set of white dots over. Press this plus button and it shifts it over. You can hit save. It saves all these settings out, even the window name. So if I close this, it takes a while to close. Come on. And run it again. It's exactly the same, so it's been set up well. You can cover this window, but you can't minimize it. So if I cover it like that, it still captures everything. I don't need this window anymore. If you minimize it, then it breaks. So don't minimize it, but you probably have it open anyway. The next cool thing we can see is what these white dots represent. So we hit show and hide processed. This is just player 1, and so basically it's gotten the color of each of those white dots and place it right in here. I'm just going to hide these two now. We're going to download the viewer. So the link we're going to use is actually this one. So I have to paste that in. And if you press download here, it'll download the zip. So it's downloading. We've got the visualizer. If we extract it, takes a little while. We open that up. You just have to open the exe. It's not that hard. If you run the executable and hold down left shift, you get a different window. This allows you to control the resolution. So I advise running it in windowed mode because you're streaming. But let's say we want a really low resolution. Then you get something like that. Cool. Just let it through your firewall because this is actually connecting to your own computer. I think private's just fine. Okay, cool. So this program here, the Python program, it's copying this screen and then outputting to here. So you can see that my things have slightly shifted. You can see that these two are just lined up perfectly. That's third place, you can see. Yeah, it runs pretty well, and you can use OBS to capture this image here. As long as the main Tetris Friends window is open and not minimized, it'll get captured. So let's just see what that looks like once these guys spawn some pieces. Yeah, it just works fine. So let's configure this program. Basically, based on the player skins, the pixels captured will be different, and hence you'll get a little bit of differences in color here. So I'm just going to show how to quickly calibrate it and save the settings. Basically, you need to do this every time the player skin changes. So in tournament setting, it'll probably take 30 seconds to a minute to set up the players before the first game. If you press 1, it opens the configuration settings for player 1. 2 does the same thing for player 2. And 3 enables and disables 3D mode. That's the only settings you need to know. So 1, color piece minimum is the minimum level of color saturation you need for the engine to detect it as a tetromino piece rather than a piece of garbage or the background or solid garbage. Default value is 0.2, that's fine, so just usually leave that. Empty block max luminance is the maximum amount of brightness in the pixel for it to detect it as a background or like empty block. So if we shift this up, everything will turn into, here we go, let's leave that. Everything turns into garbage, as you can see. Yeah. So, basically just slide it up until the garbage disappears. Usually like 0.1 is fine. Next one is solid block luminance. This is kind of hard to configure because you need solid garbage to see it. But usually 0.25 is actually fine. Some skins need 0.3. And the last one is garbage block maximum luminance. So basically you want to adjust this so that the garbage looks like a garbage block rather than a Mino with a grey skin. So once this round starts, and they get some garbage, come on, fight each other. Garbage block max. Okay. So this is a you can see down here player 2's got like actual garbage blocks, but the player on the left, when he gets garbage, come on, send, don't die. Send. This just looks like a Mino that's colored. So if we drag this up a bit, it turns between a Mino that's grey and an actual garbage block texture. So we want to bump that up until it works. For the skin, it's 0.67. Finally, the last two values are saturation and luminance. Saturation pumps up the color, and luminance bumps up the whiteness. So some skins are very pale, and you can use saturation just to bump it all the way up to max. By default, I've just set it to max because that seems to get out. Come on, it seems to just work fine. Luminance, yeah, if your blocks are very dark, then you can bump that up, but just be careful because you can actually bump it up too much. Oh, come on, where are all the games today? 5-player game, there must be a game. Where's the game? Where's the game? Here we go. Yeah, so if I just drag this all the way up, you can see that it just becomes white. So and if you drag it down, it gets very dark. So you kind of want to find the sweet spot. The default skin 1 is fine. So after you've done all the adjustment for player 1, you hit save. Press 1 again to disable the menu, and press 2 to bring up player 2. And then just all those values for player 2. And then hit save. If you fuck up, you can hit load. So if I just, like, say I fuck it up really bad and just drag all these to random values, you can see that it's doing the detection a bit wrong. Hit load. Ta-da! Magically saved. So once you've done that for both players, you're sweet. Just make sure they're saved out, and then if you close this app and open it again, it loads all those values again, and it's happy. Cool. A few more things about this application. There's no labels for any of the players because I'm assuming that if you're using OBS, you'll put those labels in yourself. There's no timer, but I assume you just rip it off the Tetris Friends timer. Yeah, the rest you can just do in OBS, so there's not much point implementing it here. These textures, you see that they're actually not that great because these are actually 22 pixel by 22 pixel textures, so it's better than the actual Tetris Friends ones, which are like 3 pixels by 3 pixels. But if you want to change them, then inside this data folder, streaming assets, all your blocks and stuff are here. So we can actually change the player borders, we can change the textures of the blocks to be higher resolution. And yeah, that'll run fine. So yeah, I highly recommend if you're streaming at like 1080p, you replace all the textures of higher texture ones that are as aesthetically pleasing as possible. The ones that are currently in there, I basically just ripped off the default skin from Tetris Friends and taken a screenshot. And yeah, those are at 22 by 22 pixels. It's a pretty odd number. Don't know why it's like that, but yeah. Cool. That's all set up. So yeah, once you've set it up once, just make sure you don't move this window. I mean, it's the same as OBS. If you're just capturing this window straight up, you don't want to move it. I think you can just drag it around and it'll still work because it's done off the offset of the top left of the corner. But if I did this and resized it, you can see that it's got problems. But you know, same thing as OBS, you'd expect that to happen. It's slightly optimized so like it actually knows when the frames aren't changing. It's not going to send huge amounts of data. It's like this, the Spectator mode is only running about 5 or 6 frames per second. This program actually runs at like well over 500 FPS on my computer.